Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
I'm such an old man with social media. It's real. What's funny to me is that I used to be amazing with MySpace.
That makes you sound so old.
Grandpa, you're on MySpace, huh?
Yeah,
but I had the funniest MySpace.
18 years old.
And I knew how to run it
funny.
well. I coded all the back end of it.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It was definitely interesting.
But the reason I say this is I was just trying to make an Instagram post about what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know how to put the words on here. And all day long.
No, that's not true. You put the words on. It's just one of them didn't. I don't know what happened.
Something didn't happen right. But then
if you didn't know how to put words on, we'd be having bigger problems.
It is so funny, actually.
Like, I like you making fun of yourself, but we need to be a little realistic.
I was like, hey, everybody, the Mother series. Oh, look at me. I don't know how to use social media.
You know what? That's why we need kids.
We do really need some kids.
The kids will facilitate us knowing the things.
Yeah, really. Speaking of
That's
kids.
why you have kids now. It's because technology is progressing so fast. There's no way to keep up with it unless you keep having children that are young enough to follow all of its changes.
But speaking of kids, you would make a terrible mother. No, wait.
That's funny.
Let me continue.
Oh, please do.
You're way too fun.
Oh, way too fun.
You wouldn't be a disciplinarian whatsoever. You'd be like, let's throw food all over the house. And kids would just be like running around, making messes.
Okay, wait. I did get a video from one of my friends the other day who's such a fun mom.
No, let me back up and talk a little bit about you. Hold on, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
This is why I've come to this conclusion. Recently, when we were at PT's house out in Colorado, all you did was take her kids who already had way too much friggin' energy and no one could have like a breathing moment away from them freaking out and yelling. And then all of a sudden they're like calmed down because I think Johnny had run them in circles outside or something to really get them. And then you get in there and you're like, ah! And you start grabbing them and like shaking them up and down and throwing them all around. And
I like the physical play with kids.
Those kids walked into that house in a place of peace and you turned them upside down.
Them up.
You are walking sugar.
But okay, here's the thing. When I took care of kids, because I nannied for years, and my specialty, my skill
was to get kids all riled up.
Was to get their energy out.
Right.
And then here's the thing. The riled up doesn't last long because they crash about 5 minutes later.
All right. It only took you 30 minutes of that screaming and yelling in my ear with the kids.
But I was having fun. I remember like I would break things as I was babysitting for people in their house, like because I was playing.
You were worse than the children.
I was worse than the children.
I was watching it. I was like, our house would be complete chaos. If we have children.
Well, when you were talking about that, the first thought I had was like, oh, if I had kids, you know what I'd do is I'd put trash bags on the floor and we'd make spaghetti for dinner, but we'd eat it off the floor and then we'd have a spaghetti fight. Like that's something I've always wanted to do.
Joking aside, I think you'd make a great mother.
Yeah. I know.
I like literally you raised me. And I want to talk about that at some point in this conversation.
Okay, but wait, can I share this story that I've been trying to share?
No one cares about it. They like listening to my sultry voice.
You have a sultry
please. I'd
voice.
love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so my friend sent me this video the other day and I thought this is the kind of mom I would be. So they were trying to sell their house. So you know you have to keep it clean
right
every time that somebody comes to have a showing.
Yeah.
So she's like, normally I would let them play with, I don't remember what it would normally be, but instead she was like, we're using soap. So she just put a ton of soap on the floor and a little bit of water and her kids were just slip and sliding.
That is awesome.
Over the floor.
That
naked.
that is genuinely a way to mother. That's quality parenting right
I
there.
know. I loved it so much. It made me think like, you're the best. But also my friend was like, that's a great way to clean your floors.
What you got to do is attach a mop to one of their butts.
Totally.
And then swish them around in it and just clean the floor with them.
Absolutely.
It's actually really fun. I think that you are fantastic at nurturing. And I think that one of the conversations that we wanted to have today is what does it look like to get the needs met that didn't happen. For a lot of people who have been listening to the process with regards to mothers that felt kind of failed in that area.
Yeah.
Maybe they felt like mom checked out, they were gone, or mom was overbearing, controlling, and ultimately they didn't experiencing the nurturing aspect of femininity from them. And so we want to kind of do a dive into that nurturing aspect and kind of healing within ourselves. Like, what can we do to participate in the self-healing process? And what are the things that kind of block that healing process? And I think that a huge part of that healing process is the nature of nurture.
Absolutely. You know, one thing that I have really recognized is that you can't get that mothering need met until you can actually recognize that you have a mothering need.
Right. Yeah. If you don't know that there's a need there, or that there's a deficit there, which a lot of, like, going back to some of the conversations we had with you, you were living in a lot of denial.
Yeah. And because there were a lot of ways that my mom was awesome. And this is kind of the dilemma that most humans are in, is they have parents who have incredible qualities and things that have hurt them. And it's like most humans don't know how to hold both at the same time.
Right.
It's either you're the worst mom or you were the best mom. And it's either I should be fine with all the crazy things you did because there were all the good things you did, or the comparing thing where people are like, well, my mom was better than all these other moms, so it must not be that bad. All of these things that we do to
really
invalidate.
Dismissive.
Yeah, we can be really dismissive. And like I said, you can either do one extreme or the other. Some people, like, I know on this process for me, I've been able to grieve who my mom wasn't and still hold on to a lot of the amazing things that she did do.
Yeah.
Because there is this beauty in balance.
Totally.
But as I became aware of it, so part of the first step in mothering yourself or nurturing yourself is actually being aware of what's going on inside of you and where that need is. Because for me in this season, I've got to be honest, I have been undone in a good way by all of the love that I have gotten to experience. And that's because I'm tuned in to the whole, and not in the hole in my heart.
The hole inside of your heart. Yeah.
Not that
the lack.
The lack. I am not in self-pity about it.
Right. You're not devastated and depression about it, but you're like, oh no, there's a legit missing component inside of my soul here. And I'm going to do something about it by letting stuff affect me. Yeah.
And that's what I would say. I have become aware of my need to let people affect me in that place.
Yeah.
Now, I had so many walls and guards up. And I think lots of people do. You could have had a mom who was critical or super controlling or overbearing or neglectful, dominating, a woman who was jealous of you. You could have had, there's so many different kinds of moms. Totally. Somebody who lives vicariously through you. Somebody
like
who's
the
super
beauty pageant
passive.
queen deal.
Yeah.
Like Honey Boo Boo.
Totally.
You're going to be my Honey Boo Boo.
A mom who's super passive, a mom, like there's so many different ways, but for me, I had a lot of guards where I needed things to be just right in my life before I could let down my guards with with women who could have been loving me in that place that I needed it.
What do you mean by you needed things to be just right?
Well, so all of my protectors, I had lots of protectors. So it's like,
these emotional protectors?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you need to be able to ask me good questions. You need to be compassionate. You need to have plenty of time. There's all these things that I'm waiting to see. So you had a
very specific definition of what a woman needed to be in order for you to receive the nurturing, mothering aspect from that person.
And even if everything was just right, to be honest, there's probably something I could find to discount anything. Like you don't feel safe because you don't have enough of a life, or you don't feel safe because your finances are out of control, or you don't there's just all these
any
ways.
Any of the aspects that maybe created pain inside of your relationship between you and your mother, you and your parents, all of a sudden they couldn't show any signs of any of that stuff.
Yep.
Otherwise, it was like, you're totally unsafe. There's nothing good about this situation.
It wasn't like you're totally unsafe. Like I need to get away from you.
Right. But
so much
in the way of letting you
them,
close to me and letting you affect me.
I'm not going to let you affect me.
Totally.
I'm not going to let that love into this. Because it's almost like I learned with my mom, there's such a meshment that it was like, I cannot let any mothering figure in because that will consume me.
Right. I think that that's a really good point that you're making there. There was a tremendous amount of enmeshment, being that you felt so tied to your mom that any female figure that you feel like you're going to give your heart away to, that somewhere unconsciously you believe, oh, I also have to be fully tied to you.
Yeah.
Tied to your emotional journey, not conscious.
Yeah. And I would say also, it wasn't like, even that I'm going to give my heart to you. It could just be a moment. I'm not going to cry with you.
Right. I'm not even going to let you in, and then like, somehow I'm tied to you. It's not like I'll let you in for this moment. Right. I won't let you in at all. And nobody would have ever known that my guards were up because my guards are so pretty and they're much more just like, I'm fine. Let me love you. I'm good. Yeah.
How are you? Tell me about you. What's going on in your life? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
It's just about having the attention on the other person. Oh my gosh. I can't handle it. I am so PMSy. I just want to say this. You have moved to every single thing.
Abby's a hand talker while we're talking, and there's like so many things on her side of the table, and I'm like, you're gonna knock all of this off.
Step by step, this entire podcast, one thing at a time. You just keep moving things over there. My ADD can't handle it. Okay, so the first thing is like learning that you have a need. And learning what are you doing that is preventing you from allowing that need to be met.
Well, let's talk about core human needs really quick, because we don't know if we don't know that needs actually exist across the board for humanity. So I'll have people come in and be like, I don't need to be touched. I don't need to be hugged. That's just not my thing. I don't need someone to ask me how I'm doing. I don't need someone to sit down with me when I'm sick and hold me. That's ridiculous. I'm good. I'm powerful. So a lot of people have written this programming for their own heart. When I couldn't get it met, it must mean that it's not who I am and it's not anything that was necessary to me. And we actually shut ourselves off from it. But what are some of those things that you think are necessary in the human experience? Yeah,
I was just talking to some clients about this because every human has basically, I think, the same amount of needs. It just shows up differently. So some people... I just wanted to say that because some people are like, no, I don't want to be needy. No, like we all have needs. Just some people can compartmentalize them and use other things like, oh, I don't feel my needs or talk about them. I just have an addiction to cover over them.
Yeah. Can we define needs real quick? Because
Go ahead.
Loosely
you
define
do that.
you threw it back at me because I think the word needs is interesting. A need can communicate, this is something that I have to have in order to survive,
like air
or food or water. And it's easy for people to communicate their wants as if, well, I need this from you. It's and I think to me, a human can survive without these needs being met. But there's something about the human soul that's kind of withers away when we don't have these certain wants or desires that are programmed at some level into the human experience. So when we talk about needs, we're talking about wants or human desires basic to the human experience.
Yeah. And you can live without them getting met. Most of us do.
Yeah.
But what happens is then we have to steal from another bank account. That is where unhealthy cycles happen because, these healthy normal needs aren't getting met. So now I have to do this other thing. So for example, a great example is we all have a need for comfort.
Right.
When we go through hard things, we need comfort. So I can talk about this, but because you're my husband and I can talk about whatever I want.
I guess you can. You are a woman. Hear her roar.
Rawr. But so when you didn't know how to get your comfort need met, what did you do? Comfort 8.
What's that?
Comfort 8.
Comfort 8.
You eat.
Oh yeah, comfort eating. Absolutely.
You ate for comfort.
Well, I went to pornography in the past too. That was a huge thing, and masturbation those are ways of comfort. And then along with that was comfort eating.
I mean, there's probably lots of things if we looked at your life that you've done to fill that comfort spot.
Right, but if we look at just food in itself, when I needed, especially later on in life, I'm like, I just need peanut butter M&Ms. I'm just having a sweet tooth right now.
Totally.
No, I'm totally in pain right now. And this is like relaxing me to be like, oh yeah. And for me inside of my history, I didn't get the physical, a lot of different core things that communicated comfort, like a physical affirmation or affection in the midst of pain.
Yeah.
But what I could do is I could go to a fridge.
Totally.
That was the one thing I had control of inside of my household to create a sense of comfort.
Yeah. And there's two kinds of opposites of how people get their needs met. One is they find out how to do it on their own, so they never have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that lands in lots of addictions. So I drink to meet my needs. I shop to meet my needs. I masturbate to meet my needs.
The hit that you get when you buy something new and you're like, this is so fun. Oh, yay. I'm feeling so fabulous right now.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, things that you can do on your own without another human. That's
Absolutely.
one way. Then there's the other extreme where people become needy to people. They become addicted to people.
Beings.
I need you to meet my need. I can't be okay if you aren't doing this for me.
That's real.
I can't. And so there's
whether
all
that's
these
through sexuality, extreme use of sexuality between each other to get comfort, or it's I need you to be around me and talk to me and tell me how awesome I am all the time.
Yeah. Or I'm playing the game to get as many people to notice me just so I can. But the point is, so we all have these needs, all of us. And some of the core human ones are comfort, nurture, compassion, validation. Those are the only ones on the top of my head. You got some?
I think words that also fall into play there are words like kindness, gentleness, patience. Like when we talk about nurture or comfort, I think of a comforting touch, a
gentle person,
a gentle person with a kind response suddenly, who is willing to cry with us or listen to us and be present with us.
Yeah. Everybody wants to be seen, understood,
known, heard,
and delighted in.
Yeah.
Every human wants to
enjoyed.
My dad had talked to me about how there's actually a human need that you miss. So when you're a kid, you're designed to need people to be delighted when you walk into the room. Now, not all the time, obviously that's impossible, but to experience that, like when
so we can raise a bunch of narcissists.
Yeah, exactly. You're not supposed to do it all the time.
Doves, the child has walked into the room. You are the golden one.
You are the child.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, not like that. But you do need to, humans are designed to need to not feel contempt.
Right.
All the time.
To feel as though they're appreciated, valued, enjoyed, welcomed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so the concept is we all have these designs and desires, and moms don't meet all of them, even when you have healthy moms.
No singular mom could.
Yeah, our needs are not designed to be met by one person, any kind of person, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, mother, father,
friends,
best friend. Like no one can meet this need. No
singular person can do that.
And oftentimes a lot of resentment happens in relationship when you're trying to get
bitterness and resentment,
the other people to meet all of your needs.
Yes. Be my everything. And I talk about that as being my God. Come be my God that is my source to all things and solve all my problems.
Yeah. So for me, I had this need to be mothering, covered over that with denial, independence. I'll meet my own needs. I'll be fine. But it ultimately left holes in other areas of my life. And so in this journey, I heard that I felt like, in my spirit, I felt this word that said, in order to return to childlike wonder, you have to return to childlike vulnerability. And I recognized, like, I had gotten so good at being in charge or in control or whatever. And I knew I had to be vulnerable. And so for me, part of receiving nurture and allowing that mothering spot in my life to get healed has been letting people love me. And let me just give a variety of reasons because I think people get kind of stuck in their mind. So
right.
I remember I went and I visited, this is so funny. I went and I visited one of my friends, family, and the daughter was in the hospital and the mom was in the hospital with her daughter. And the mom comes up to me and she said something while we were there. I'm so sorry you've been sick. I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, your daughter's like in the ICU. Like,
right.
Like that is worse. We don't have to be talking about this, but she's like, I'm so sorry. It's so hard when you don't know like all of the answers and blah, blah, blah. And then she just hugged me. And because I don't have that in my life and because I've opened up myself, like what I did is I was like, oh, this is what a mom body feels like. That like just when she hugged me, I was like, this is what a mom body feels like. This
right.
is,
you could feel the essence of a mother even in her physical touch and approach.
And like I just allowed myself in that moment to just like, because I'm aware of that place inside of me, I also am opening up that can be affected. So I just let that in. And I remember we were just at my friend's the other night and they're my age.
Yeah.
And I was just crying because I'd been in so much pain recently and was kind of hitting like the end of my capacity to deal with it very well. And so I'm just crying on the couch and my friend she's younger than me.
Yeah. And she has multiple kids.
Yep. She came over and just grabbed me and held me. And the way I want to describe it is like, I just felt I felt mothering energy. Like right. I could feel the way that she
loves and cares for her kids.
Like she just entered into that space with me. I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, be my mom. I didn't feel like you can fix it. But I could feel the mothering energy emanating off of her. And I just soaked it in and allowed myself to just cry and allowed her to just hold me and pet me. And I think she sang to me and she was just very nurturing.
And you allowed yourself internally to be small in a healthy way. Like,
yeah.
I don't have to be self-sufficient right now, like the most powerful person in the room. I could see that you went to allowing yourself to be like a little kid.
Yeah, because normal me would probably make a joke and deflect and end that.
It's a great way to point out people joke and deflect.
And then I'd maybe start crying. She'd maybe hug me. And then after like 30 seconds of that, I would make a joke and switch the subject to someone else.
I'm being such a baby, huh? And then off you go.
Well, I probably wouldn't have said that.
Right. I'm
like
making
myself,
up something
yeah.
a guy might do or something like that. Because I'm giving an example of deflection.
But again, for me to get my childlike wonder back, I have to have the childlike vulnerability. And kids will allow themselves to be comforted and nurtured as long as they need.
Yeah. And especially if they're sad and they're in pain of some sort, they're going to run and cry to anyone who's in their near vicinity.
Totally.
They don't care who it is. They're like, hold me.
Yeah. Well, and I found this thing, like, again, I spent my whole life needing everything to be perfect before I would allow myself to feel. And now I just feel this invitation of like, no, cry in front of this person because it's not about how they respond anymore. Mm-hmm. It's about me accessing that part of me and choosing into it.
And you literally could have, talking about the mother in the ICU unit, her daughter was in terrible, terrible shape.
Yeah.
Horrific situation.
Totally.
And she's over there with that. And you could have easily deflected the moment and been like, internally said, nope, that's not okay. Her daughter's like this, given a tangible reason for why you're going to deflect the moment. And you easily could have been like, oh, thanks, that's sweet of you. Totally. And just brushed it off. But you actually let the hug come in and embrace you. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to be aware of that. Where are we deflecting?
Yeah.
Like if we start being aware of something we need, where have we been deflecting through years? Mm-hmm. Whether it's through jokes or saying, oh, I got this, no big deal, changing the subject, turning the energy towards someone else and be like, how can I help you? Because you easily could have been like, let's talk about your daughter right now and just taken charge of that moment.
And I wasn't insensitive. I didn't be like, yeah, let's talk about all my problems while your daughter's here. Like I didn't do that, but I didn't do the opposite.
Right.
And a lot of people don't recognize that a coping deflecting is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
That means you are triggered and shutting people off or shutting moments down. This is probably one of the number one ways I see, and people don't because it's not mean or aggressive. Nobody calls them on it.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been telling somebody something I love about them. And the whole time they're like, yeah, no, okay, that's great. But blah, 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 blah. And they're like trying to get out of it or whatever. And I'm like, no, could you just let this love in? Because I want to give this to you. And I've recognized that in my own life, there were so many women I could have been allowing And I have to say this because so many people want one. I just want a mom. I just want, and like in church, it'll be like, I want a spiritual mom, or I just want like a fake mom that will come and give me everything that I didn't get.
Yeah.
And there's no way that will ever happen.
No, there's never going to be one singular person that's going to fulfill that space.
No. And so the idea is like, I allow moments to fill my mothering spot, not a person.
Yeah. And I want to, can we veer on to a little few other of the blockages that keep us away from it? So we may find out like we need these things, but we may not even have the capacity to know our needs in these areas, because we have so much unforgiveness towards someone, especially towards our mother, that we've decided, especially we don't need this. We'll never want this. We'll never desire this. So for instance, I know that there are ways with my mom where I was just like so embittered about the pain that was created inside of that relationship, and there was unforgiveness there, that I just decided I don't ever need anything from a woman.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't want it. Mm-hmm. It's unnecessary.
If I don't need something from you, you can't hurt me.
Right.
You can't destroy me.
I couldn't even see the need because of the unforgiveness that was being harbored inside of that space. And I think that there's a couple keys of unforgiveness. I know for men, and I think this may be for women as well, but I know historically, if you don't mind me talking a little bit kind of to our men in this, I know that a lot of men, especially within the last generation or so, grew up in homes where dads were predominantly outside of the house and moms were inside of the house. Now that's shifting, evolving, changing, whatever. But I know that was an experience a lot of us had. And inside of that space, a lot of mothers turned to their sons especially and treated them as though they were their little husbands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was this impossible role that little boys felt like they were being expected to fulfill.
Yeah.
And there were also a lot of times those mothers then were resentful towards their sons. Mm-hmm. But then there was also this sense of moms who spoke poorly of their dads and built cases against their fathers. So inside of that intimacy where moms were having these conversations that shouldn't have been being had with a child, there was, your dad's...
just for the record, no parent should talk, like you should not talk to your kid about what you're frustrated about their other parent.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Like it doesn't, and it feels good because you feel like I'm going to get validated because you actually see and
really
understand.
Do see me.
But anytime you are bad mouthing someone that they came from, it creates an identity crisis subconsciously for them.
Right. So,
because they know that they came from that person too.
Right. There's something about, say, Justin. Justin came
from Bob and Bobby.
From Bob and Bobby, both of them. And so there's a whole part of me that's being told that it's wrong and it's being scorned inside of that situation.
Yeah.
And so we can either begin to hate ourselves or hate our fathers. And so there can be a lot of unforgiveness with our moms who spoke unknowingly.
Yeah.
That we don't even know that, I'm actually pissed off at my mom because she spoke so poorly of my father.
Yeah. I meet a ton of guys that I'm like, they hate women. But if I told them like you hate women, they'd be like, no, I don't. Like it's not a conscious thing, but it's this deep rooted, you will never meet my needs. You will only cause me pain. I will never be enough for you. And so anger and walls are a way to protect ourselves from feeling that pain.
Absolutely. I think one of the things you talked about, I'll never be enough for you. That's another place where we have to forgive ourselves, for not being enough for our moms.
Yeah.
And that can be for men or women alike, especially if a girl was raised by her mom at being her best friend and her mom always turned to her, like your mom turned to you and not to your dad, and your mom spoke poorly of your dad in front of you. Right. And I think that there's this thing that feels, let me back up on this, especially with guys, because I think this is a necessary conversation. I oftentimes talk about the idea that we as men have this hatred towards women, especially because we feel like women, somehow femininity should be able to validate us.
Yeah.
So, if a woman sees how good I am as a man, then suddenly I am actually good. I'll be okay with myself. And there can be this unforgiveness towards women because they can't actually meet that that full expression for
So
us.
true.
They can't fully validate us as men, but anything where we have a hatred and an anger and a judgment towards femininity, especially with regards to our mothers, what will happen is we won't be able to get the nurturing need met.
Yeah. Absolutely.
In healthy ways.
And that's a lot. I think this is a lot where sexuality, I would say the struggle for porn with men, I think there's like half of it is father wounds and half of it is mother wounds. It's both.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Dan Allender, we had him on my podcast, formerly the Man podcast I had, and he talked about pornography is this deep-seated hatred for women when we engage it. And I was like, that's a very interesting conversation piece.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to mention it's also from fathers because most of the men I know who have a porn issue don't have masculinity validating them. They don't have men friends. They don't have intimacy where any men know what's going on inside of them, where they actually have relationship. They're not taught those relational skills and they're not getting the man need met. So they're turning to women to meet all of their needs.
Yep.
But then the other part is you don't get your needs met from your mom, from the women around you. So then you also turn towards, I need this in order for me to feel okay.
And I'm going to try and take it. And a lot of times, especially for guys, the strong sexual pull to try and get women is I'm going to get that nurturing need met in a way that isn't pure, that isn't the purity of nurture. Yeah. It's actually stealing, using, abusing, stuff like that. Anyways, going back to the point, unforgiveness. We have to begin to ask ourselves, am I harboring any form of unforgiveness towards the female authority figures in my world? I had a strong unforgiveness with my grandmother. Mm-hmm. I hated her. Mm-hmm. If you were to ask me, just straightforward, if you were to ask me, what do you think about your grandma? I'd say she's a bitch.
Oh gosh.
Like that is the plain and simple. She was harsh, mean, critical, judgmental. Yeah. And the poor little boy historically really felt like that and really had walls, especially against her in that relationship. And there was a journey that I went on with forgiving my mother that was key, but I didn't realize it till later on where I was like, oh my gosh, I still have this hatred for my grandmother and this judgment towards her and how she treated me so mean and nastily. Nastily, I don't know if that's a word. Mean and nasty. That I had to go into that. And I think that we as people don't think even generationally. Yeah. We don't expand beyond our mother right in front of us. Right. We have to expand into the mother figures that supersede just moms. And I watched, and again, we talked about this kind of last week about how it affects, but the more you forgave femininity, the more our connection grew. And the more you forgave femininity, the more you allowed comfort. And I could allow you to kindly touch me and be there for me in moments because I wasn't on guard against you or the shadow of femininity that I was having a war with. Yeah. I was just thinking about how one of the mothering moments that really impacted you, I think, was when you had surgery and we have a friend of ours who's not old enough to be your mom. She's more our age. Yeah. And she came over after you had surgery and just rubbed your head. Yeah. She sat, I remember, you had ended up taking a trip during that time while I was getting my nose surgery, and she just has such a mother's heart, and she would come over and check in immediately, actually right after it, and she sat there for a couple of hours on the bed next to me, and I'm laying there just like blood's coming out of my nose and stuff, and she would just like kind of just like pet my arm and just be like, you're gonna be okay, and I'm all drugged up, and I could feel this thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being so taken care of. And I had enough drugs in me and I was in enough pain for my walls to fully be down. I was in a true place of need that was undeniable, that I could not take care of myself. Yeah. And I needed the caretaking moment. But you, in the past, I think wouldn't have even allowed that. I think you would have been like, I'm fine. I can handle the pain on my own. Yeah, I would have potentially tried to power through that. Totally. Mm-hmm. So this is the goal, that as we forgive, women and men, we both have to forgive our moms, and we both have to also like let down our guards, but not in a way that we invite people. So I have a friend and she has a lot of issues with her mom,
And so what she did was she tried to let down her guard and let another woman come in and mother her, and gave like her whole heart over to this other woman. And this other woman was also crazy, and it just devastated her more. And so some people, I think they think being vulnerable and being affected is allowing one person to come in and I had multiple clients who've had people who wanted to step in the role of mothering. And I think everyone who wants to do that, their intentions are good. I have done that before, to mother somebody, and my intentions were good. But sometimes it can be that we're trying to get our needs met, or we're trying to be controlling. So if you have one person that you give your whole life over, you didn't give your whole life over to our friend.
No, absolutely
you just
not.
I allow
a moment where I'm going, I am in need, and I'm going to allow this to actually affect me.
Yeah.
And I walked out of it even after I was physically healed, and I allowed myself to meditate on the reality of that moment. And I was able to go to her and be like, thank you so much. That was a key moment in my world.
Yeah. Now, another way that I nurture myself or like work on the reparenting, is I actually watch other moms that are healthy with their kids.
Yeah.
And this is a tricky one, because if you didn't experience it, it's really easy to be jealous. Honestly, I've never struggled.
Or resentful about it.
Yeah. I, for the first time this year, felt resentful and jealous because I didn't know I missed things. So then when I was like, oh, I missed things and other people got them, oh my gosh. So I had to grieve that for a minute. But I don't sit in it. But most of the time when I watch somebody who's a great mom to their kids, I literally imagine what that would have felt like to be in an experience like that, and who I would have felt like I could be, because whatever emotions that I can imagine for me, I can actually pull into my reality. So when I look at, there's this woman that I watch who's an amazing mother. And when I watch her mother her kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I grew up in a house like that, I would feel so safe, and I would feel permission to let down my guard. And I wouldn't be thinking all the time about, am I the biggest person in the room, or like what needs to happen? I would be just like getting to dream or be excited, or what, like I imagine, oh, what if I could just go and cry on my mom anytime that I wanted to? Like, this is what this woman is like. Ash, if you ever listen to this, I love you. But I look at her and I'm like, well, what would it be like to be mothered by someone like that? And then I actually apply that. Like, I feel those feelings. I allow myself.
Towards yourself.
Well, I don't feel like what she would feel towards me. I literally feel like, what would it feel like to be raised? Oh, I'd feel safe and I'd feel free. And then I meditate on those feelings, what it would produce in me to be like that. And so instead of being jealous of good mothering, I literally try to soak it in. Whatever age, there's another mom that I watch a lot who is old enough to be my mom, and she loves her kids so much. And when I'm around her, it's kind of like I imagine it like she has mothering energy, and it's not aimed at me. It's aimed at her kids.
Right.
But I soak it in. I soak in the experience of getting to see what it could look like. And so I get to now feel filled by the thing I didn't get, instead of feeling depleted and envious of it.
Yeah, totally. I think that, how do I put, can I talk about the self aspect?
This is probably the most important.
Right. Well, when we think of concepts like kindness and gentleness and compassion, I think that there's an essence of self-nurturing that actually gets to take place. So we can watch models. So we can watch people model it to people in their space, and imagine what it would be like if we were their kids, or if we had an environment like that. We can even allow the love that people have to give in moments to really sink in.
Wait, I got to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. You imagine what it would be like, but then you take that and you put it in your heart to actually to live like that. Like, I once heard this guy say, he was bullied all the time, and his mom said, imagine how you would act if you were fully confident and act that way. Right. And so it's not just that you feel what you would feel if they were your parents, but then you actually imagine walking out
daily as if you had received those experiences.
If I had received this, how would I feel fearless? Right. That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry.
So the next step is really this sense of I'm going to reflect this mothering, nurturing nature to myself with compassion and patience. So there's a couple different levels of that. Now I have my history and then I have my present moments. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is I learned how to be, if my body was in pain, mm-hmm. I didn't have bullying dialogues any longer. I stopped the bullying dialogues that said, get over it. It's mm-hmm. not that bad. Suck it up. You just keep moving forward, Justin. Mm-hmm. I literally would be like, oh my gosh, I really hurt my arm. My back's out of place right now. I'm not going to like push myself around and try and make myself overcome the rest of this day. I'm going to take a break and breathe and be really like gentle and patient with my process, with my body.
Yes.
Or with maybe some decision I've made. Maybe I'm in emotional pain and I'm going, I could again, just power through it. Or I could go, no, in this moment, I need to realize that was a really difficult thing that really happened. And I need to sit in that and not get angry at myself about not being able to overcome this hurdle in this moment or overcome this pain in this moment. So I learned how to settle in and be present with myself and allow myself to grieve. It was this gentleness towards self. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just here in the present. I started doing it in my history.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are historical moments where we look into our past and we go, man, I remember that time. It was so painful in high school when I was up on stage and I was giving a speech and all the seniors are heckling me. And this was really from my life. I was a junior in high school. I gave a speech and I was being heckled by the seniors. And after that speech, I went behind the curtain and next guy came out and I went and I ran home. Oh. And I ran home in shame.
Right.
And I just sat in my bedroom and I was just so angry with myself and I felt so foolish. There was a lot of hatred.
Yeah.
And I remember I started reviewing that moment one time. Mm-hmm. And I remember in my memory of that historic moment, I sat down next to myself and I said, Justin, you are not a failure here. Mm-hmm. You're not bad. There's nothing wrong with you. This wasn't about you. This was about a couple of people specifically that started this who they hate themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not kind. Mm-hmm. They're looking to hurt other people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry this happened to you. But it was like that exchange, that nurturing exchange that was necessary. And I imagine myself in that way.
Right. Because we treat ourselves, our internal dialogue, our self-talk is often what we learned from our parents.
Yeah.
And so you'd spent years yelling at yourself, beating up yourself, being condescending, being critical, being perfectionist, all of the things, your mom was a perfectionist. So now you're a perfectionist with yourself.
Right.
And I agree. There are so many areas in my own mind and heart that I haven't. And for me, I had to go back and for this healing process, it's like, for the first time, I feel like I'm seeing the little girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, because I've told you that your feelings didn't matter and you should be fine and everything was fine. I've never seen you, so I could never love you.
Right.
I could never parent you. I abandoned you all the time. Like when things were hard, I wasn't like, oh, this is hard and I'm going to comfort you through it. I'm like, you're fine, keep going and never look back. And so there's been a place where every time I've had a revelation about my childhood, I instantly like picture me as a young kid.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I would picture 7-year-old me and I would go back and be like, I'm so sorry that you were in a constant war around you. I'm so sorry and I just like apologize and pretty much just validate, like I see you.
Right.
And I actually see why these things affected you.
A core human need. Mm-hmm. Need to be seen, need to be validated, safe, understood.
Yep.
You're giving it to a part of your soul that's still there. It's running around. It's playing a record in the background and causing you pain. And you're bringing resolution.
Absolutely.
Of the nurturing nature into it.
But it was interesting because so I could see 7-year-old me and I could do that, but I couldn't get her to believe that things weren't her fault. Even when I would like go nurture her and be like, there was like a stuckness. But when I went back to 3-year-old me and I was becoming aware of like things that were happening in my family around that time. But 3-year-old me, I had so much compassion for. You cannot heal without compassion. It's like a key ingredient to healing. And so actually learning to go back and see that little kid and now, so when people I'm so aware of how screwed up I am. Like this, I've never been more aware in any season of how screwed up I am.
Yeah.
But
You're
every
really
time, but totally I am. But
you a hot mess, girl?
There's no condemnation or shame in that, because every time my screwed upness comes up, I like go to compassion for the little girl.
Right.
Oh, I see that it really affected you.
Well,
I see that it really connected to you. And so now I'm going to actually nurture you instead of what I've been doing forever, which is throw you in the closet.
The key component, like our capacity for compassion, lies within our ability to let go of judgment and forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
So to give a quick example, there's a woman actually that came into my office, and we were having a discussion. There was like this line in the sand where she had a life-changing moment that shifted her whole life, where she decided to make an entirely different set of decisions moving forward. So as she shifts her life into this new life where she's making better choices, not being destructive, kind of following better moral rules, if you will, and stuff, she has this new life, and she's like, this is the me now. And then this was the me before that thing. I'm not that.
Yeah.
I am not that. I don't want anything to do with that. And there are these lines in the sand where we maybe have a healing moment.
We demonize a past season or a past self.
Yep. And we just go, I never want to look at that again. That was before this moment in time. Now I'm better. And now that's all I want to focus on. But you said something earlier. You talked about the concept of abandonment. And it's that line in the sand where we walk away from the person who was in pain of ourselves, the part of ourselves that was in pain, making destructive decisions. There's this abandonment that happens when we just turn our head away from it. And one of the conversations I had with her is I was like, you built a wall between you and her, and you need to break your wall down, and you need to go back to her and actually begin to engage her, because you holding on to this judgment and unforgiveness is really shaming her.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of your soul that's always in conflict because it doesn't know where to go. It doesn't have a source of love to turn to. And so again, a key thing is, what are the things that I've held judgment towards myself, where I need to forgive myself from the past, enter into that and not be disgusted by that anymore, but actually bring nurturing into that space so that I can now move forward as a whole person.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy for us to fracture ourselves into a million fragments and go, that was that season, that was that season. And we're separating ourselves from ourselves. But what if we could gather all of it together and forgive all of it and love all of it into one whole piece?
I love that. It's very beautiful. We should all gather all of the pieces together.
Make one big messy puzzle.
I think that a lot of what you're saying too is like being patient with yourself, being gentle with yourself, being kind to yourself. So the concept is, if you wrote out the perfect mom that could have met all of the needs ever in your life, then can you treat yourself that way? Because so many of people feel like a victim to their childhoods. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're still acting like what you received as a kid, then you're actually victimizing you in the name of something that happened a long time ago. And you don't need to do that anymore. Right. You can be free now because of you changing the behavior and you changing how you relate to yourself.
I think do we have anything else? Because we're about to wrap this up. I think here.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I do, and I tell people to do this, look for a surrogate. And again, I don't look for one person that can meet all my needs. This is different than kind of like moments, but I started looking in my life because really in this season, I don't have a mom at all. Right. And it's a real complicated thing, like grieving while somebody is alive still. But I actually think probably lots of people would want to mother me if my mom was dead. You know, there's like a more of a pull towards that. Yeah. But so what I've started doing is like, I'm going to call Peetsy's mom and tell her about this house I looked at. Why? Because I don't have a mom to call. about that. And I'm going to call
things that you would do with a healthy mom. You're going to engage other.
I'm going to call this aunt, and I'm going to call this friend's parent that I know,
right,
who just is open. And I'm not going to imagine they can meet all of my needs. I'm just going to do these little things so that I don't feel alone in my life.
But deliberate exchanges.
Mm-hmm. So like I have a friend who's in this, she doesn't have a mom either. And I'm like going through, well, tell me about your aunts and uncles. Do any of them feel safe? Tell me about your husband's mom. Does she feel safe? And not safe as in like she can meet all of my needs and everything's fine. It's much more, is there some area, is there one part of mothering this person can hit? Like maybe it's just you call them and you tell them about the random thing that happened to you that day. Do you just allow people, imperfect people, to fill that spot, but pursue connection? You'll find there's people around you. There are people. They may not meet the whole, but if you have a collection of people, it can allow you to not feel orphaned and alone.
Totally. I think that's great. I don't know if I remember the other thing I was going to say. You stole it.
I'm so sorry.
You destroyed it. Why are you a ruiner of things? Anyways.
Was it about your heart and the whole, picking up all of the pieces?
No. I think that as we walk away from this episode, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I have such a high regard for femininity. Mm-hmm. And our capacity to receive nurturing says something about our actual value for femininity, true femininity, and our relationship with it and our understanding of it.
Yeah.
And it's my dream that I think part of us getting healing in this area of our hearts is honoring femininity and honoring the nurture nature that it brings into our world. And it's my dream and desire to see the war with femininity destroyed, especially in the masculine role.
Oh, absolutely.
Of how men have a war with it. If we can resolve this within ourselves, we can begin to honor and respect and empower femininity in healthy ways and not use, abuse, and take from it. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you're not a nurturing woman, that doesn't mean you're broken. You may not have experienced it before, or
but what
it may
if you
be
can
something
be part of the redemption
learn.
Process of like, okay, I didn't get it, but I want to see that come alive inside of me.
Yeah, because I've seen, like, you were not compassionate when I married you, and you have learned compassion.
I was compassionate in certain ways.
Yeah. Totally.
Put it that way. I had a strong compassion in certain areas of life, but I definitely didn't know how to express it.
But all that I was saying was not trying to blame you. It was just saying you can learn nurture. If you're sitting here as a woman, you're like, that's not me. I'm not like that. I must be failing as a mom, or I don't know.
These are elements that we can learn. Absolutely.
Yep. It's the journey of pursuit of them. So listen, we have our Living Fully Alive course that's coming up. It's going to be in January, and we're about to do early registration, and there's a discount. So you're going to want to get in on that. But we actually go into this, like, we're breezing over this, but we actually walk people through the healing process and how to actually get love into those places and let down your walls, and how to forgive yourself, and how to gather the pieces. And so I've talked to 7 people this week that did it last year, who are like, it changed my life. It changed my marriage. Like I was depressed for years. Now I'm not depressed anymore. It radically affected all of my relationships. Like, I've been really blown away actually by the, how it impacted people being like, I've been in counseling for years and nothing hit me. I've never had an experience like this course. So I was very thankful that it was helpful for people. But so if you want to be a part of that, we'd love to have you join us. Email us at LFA, which stands for Living Fully Alive, LFA at
stumvalconsulting.com. And we'll go ahead and put you on our email list for all of our stuff that we're doing right now. That's going to come up. The early bird registration is probably going to happen in November.
Yep.
I think is where it is, early November. That's going to happen. So there's a huge discount with that. And if you guys have been touched by anything we've said, please rate, review, subscribe, and share these episodes with people. You can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Just go out there and do that. We do this for free on our end because we want to see people healed. So get the message out for us if you've been touched.
Yeah.
So
go mother and be mothered. You mother, mother, mother.
You mother lover.
You mother lover. Father
Peace
lover.
out. Peace out. Goodbye.